Okay, so hi everyone. Let's start off with the commentary of my latest drawing. So now we start off with what I usually do is I start off with this base idea or concept of my character, to give me a feel of what the artwork would turn out like what of story I want to tell and the posing. So now I move on to the next stage, which is the second line. Here I start to add more finer details of the character in, like maybe the hair, the body. That way I can sort of like adjust the pose and the anatomy of the character. Feel where the the shoulders, how would it fall, and the hips, the action line, the gravity of the center of gravity, stuff like making sure that the anatomy is correct. So at this stage, it's also important to afterwards fill in like a quick solid colors. It doesn't have to fall into the line, but quick solid colors to sort of like know if your lines are alright, which I sort of regretted not doing later. I'll just forward this a little, just adding details there. So after adding in the details, what I do is that I change the lines to blue, and then afterwards lower the transparency of the layer to add in my final outline. So now let me forward it. Yep, change the transparency of the layer and add in my final lines. So at this stage, what I do is that I have got taker lines on the outside of the character. That way it would sort of draw focus onto the character. And then as it goes in, it sort of like have like a medium line and then thinner line. So places like, for instance, maybe the fringe of the character, the sides of the hair, places where maybe the shadow would fall, I tend to have a medium line, and things like maybe the details of the hair, the shirt, if the character is wearing a shirt, for instance, maybe the wrinkles of the shirt, I would have a thin line on it. Another technique which you could use is to fill in ink pockets onto places where the shadow would fall, like the corners. So that's another good technique to learn. Yeah, so I'll just go ahead and forward this a little. So after this step, I would go on to filling in a base color. Yep, so now I'm filling the base color. How I fill in the base color is that I usually tend to separate into different layers. So for in the case of this artwork, I separate it to the plug suit, the face, the skin tone, the hair, and the eyes. So yeah, I separate the different layers. This way it's easier when I do my shadows and highlights, because I don't want the shadow from the suit, for instance, to go onto the face. I want them to have like different sort of shadowy colors. As you can see here, I'm struggling with the face a little, and I'm readjusting it because and this could have been avoided if I actually filled in a solid color on my second step where I do my second outlines. because I didn't fill in solid colors then, I didn't have a good enough feel of the character. Also, I think a lot of it comes with practice and I'm still learning, so yeah, hopefully when I get better, I would be able to understand my drawings better as well. So yeah, just putting in the solid colors right now. And then filling in the background, I decided I would go for a dark background. Sort of, I was thinking at this point maybe something like starry sky, So now I go back to the suit and I'm adding the shadows. As you can see here, I've added in like a purpley pink, dusky pink hue for my shadow. And yeah, it's important to add like a little bit of color into your shadow instead of using grays. Now I'm just adding the highlights, adding a bit of color, and yeah, just to make sure that things pop a bit. So now I'm adding red lines in the background. This is if you watch Evangelion, they have got like red crosses when I think the enemies blow up. So I thought I'd add something similar to this. And I think red lines sort of help to enforce the perspective of the character. Okay. So yeah, now I move on to the hair, and then I am now doing the highlights of the hair, the shadows and the highlights. So for places like the hair and eyes, I tend to have a lot of layers for them because I want to add as much details as I can. And I think it's quite important places where you would want your audience focus to go on to. Right now I'm just doing the highlights for the face. And now I move on to the eyes. Unfortunately, I had to readjust the eyes a couple of times because I wasn't very happy by how the angle of the eyes turned out and the position of it on the face. And like I said earlier, it could be easily avoided if I were to do a solid color on step 2 properly, or if I were a bit more if I had a bit more skills and professionalism in my work, because I'm still learning that my lines aren't very good, I think. And all of this comes with practice, and yeah, I think it's important to understand from your mistake and flaws. So here I'm just doing the globe, which she's looking at, the earth. I'm actually quite happy with how that turned out. Now looking at it again, I was like, oh no, I hate these eyes, I'm gonna change it. So yeah, I went back and readjusted the eyes again. I think it looks better, but at the same time, because the eyes have moved, I feel like the hair should move as well, but I couldn't really adjust it at this point. I just had to let that slide. So yeah, now I'm just thinking, okay, what can I do to enhance this image? So what I do now is to add like lights coming out from her suit and her headpiece. Sort of like, yeah, maybe if I add like glows there, it would make the image look better, because it wasn't really popping to me previously. I thought, yeah, I'll add more highlights, more lights from the background, lights from the suit, sort of like make it pop a bit better. Like, And now I'm thinking, how can I adjust maybe the background, maybe add a bit more stars, readjust the tones. And at this stage here, it's all about the final adjustments, where I adjust the colors, the curves, and the levels of the image. Soft, help pop it a bit. Yeah, and I guess that's the end of the drawing. Now go ahead and just talk about some of the pros and cons. Okay, so here I would like to talk about the negatives and positives. So let's start with the negatives, why not? First off, the face, I'm not very happy with it. I feel like the eyes, they are out of line with the rest of the face. So the hair, the eyes, and the mouth, the nose, they all don't really match up well enough. For instance, because I've adjusted the eyes of it, the center line of the hair do not match the position of the eyes, and because of that, the nose and mouth feels like it's a bit off as well. Secondly, the perspective, I feel like it could be worked upon. It is meant to be a view looking upwards, so I feel like maybe the hip could be a bit wider, and the lights onto the chest area could sort of help emphasize that view, which wasn't really shown here. And lastly, the background. I feel like this background is just a background, and it doesn't really help make the image look better or pop the image out. I feel like a lot of this comes with practice, and another thing which would help is if I had worked a bit more on my baselines, my line art, before actually working on the drawing. I think it's very important as an artist to acknowledge the negatives of your image, so that you could take that into consideration next time you do your next artwork. But with that said, I would also like to talk about some of the positive aspects of this. So I really like how it portrays a story, how she looked innocent and confused as to what she's going to do while looking at Earth, which is very tiny in her hands. She could easily squish it, she could easily treasure it. So yeah, I like the story behind it. I also like the lights which were shown on her chest and her underarm. I feel like it really helps pop the image out a bit. Yeah, so those are some of the comments I have about my artwork. If you have any comments, any critics, any positive, negatives, feel free to leave in the comments below. I would love to hear from you, and it would also help me improve on my next work. If you would like to see the time-lapse video, I would also leave a link in the description below, so you can look at the entire time-lapse process. So that's it for now. Hope you enjoyed that video, and feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you very much for watching. Good night.